Good morning, guys. Welcome to this week's trainings. I'm excited here. So good to see you guys. I'm very happy you're here. Welcome. Before we get started, if you're new to me, I'm Burtcher, and I help codependents discover happiness after their codependency, and I also help them heal from their trauma bond and their love addiction, which is going to be the dominant focus for my trainings for the next 3 weeks, because we're getting ready to open the doors to Addiction to Connection, which is my 8-week system that helps you heal the internalized loneliness that drives that, break free of the euphoria and the fantasy, and they ultimately create connection within you and with others that replaces your need for love addiction. So you get that freedom and that relief from that craving, the euphoria, the distress, the discard, all of that there. So before we get this started out, I need to share this to the community real quick. The community, if you're not a member of it, you're welcome to join it. This is my my safe haven, my shelter for those of us who have survived narcissistic abuse, love addiction, that kind of thing. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, because I put out trainings 3 to 4 times a week. I'd be happy to have you as a part of the community. Okay, let me hop here and get it shared out. These mornings getting into gear. Okay, boom, there we go. So good morning, guys. It's nice to see you. So today we're starting a series here. I call it the S.A.D cycle, and it's also, in the past, I've called this the consumer supply relationship or the narcissistic abuse cycle. So I'm going to show you a graphic of what this thing looks like, so you can get a visual of what we're going to be talking about. So boom, there we are. The S.A.D cycle is a 3-phase cycle. It goes through seduction, abuse, and discard. Okay, and then it'll go round and round. A lot of the time, especially with deeply enmeshed romantic relationships, where the predator, the narcissistic individual, the narcissist themselves feels like they can get a lot of supply out of you, and I'll talk about supply here in a moment. They're going to go take you through this cycle repeatedly. So supply. What is supply? Okay, supply is the fuel that they take from you. It's attention, it's affection, it's sex, it's money, it's time, it's your presence, it's your looks, it's your body, it's whatever they feel adds to their identity, to their grandiosity, to their specialness, whatever inflates them. I call it narcissistic inflation. Whatever inflates their sense of self is what they're going to go after there. And so seduction, this cycle is about controlling that supply and gleaning supply from the individuals who do it. And today, I'll ask you a question first. Does this look familiar? Where you get seduced and then things lapse into this abuse and this criticism and this antagonism towards you, and then you get discarded, ignored, thrown away, replaced. And then back to the seduction. They're emailing you again, they're texting you again, they're calling you again. Yeah, this is familiar. Then you've been dealing with a narcissistic person or a actual narcissist, a predator that way, the social predator. And this is the cycle that's been going on in the background that makes you crazy. Creates this massive euphoria in the seduction phase, huge distress during the abuse phase, and then a lot of despair during the discard phase. This is what drives us crazy here. So hi, Pavlina. And then today we're going to be talking specifically about the seduction phase. So I'm going to switch this back to here. Boom. Hi. So seduction has some very specific qualities to it that are different than flirtation. So the healthy cycle in meeting someone, that first phase wouldn't be seduction. It'd be flirtation and connection. It would be getting to know you. It would be a slow escalation. It would be a slow burn. They'd be interested in understanding who you are, what you're about, what turns you on, what brings you alive in the world. And generally, it's a pretty calm. It can be exciting, and fun, and you kind of get your head in the clouds, but you're also able to locate yourself too in the experience. You know where your feet are, and if you don't, you know how to come back to the ground, back to you in that response. And that's the healthy equivalent, or the healthy opposite of the seduction phase. Now this is a really really powerful and problematic thing for us. Because if we've been through chronic neglect and abuse growing up, the seduction phase is going to be incredibly euphoric. It's going to be extremely addictive and extremely appealing to us because it plays into this internalized fantasy we have about what real love is and how real love completes us. Next week, we're going to talk in depth about the fantasy and about the euphoria, the despair, and the distress cycle called EDD that happens inside of you when this seduction, abuse, and discard cycle is happening in your relationship. So, some elements about seduction that have some very key elements that define seduction from a healthy flirtation and attraction. These are 4 things I want you to keep attention to or keep aware of in your interactions with new people, especially if you have an initial impulse of repulsion from them. You're like, but then you start to get into it and you're like, well, maybe, and they're really concentrating on you. You're actually in the seduction phase. I find it interesting because over the 12 years I've been working with people in trauma, and then the 8 years I've been working with them specifically in codependency and love addiction, almost all of them, I'd say about 95% of my clients and students, all had an initial gut reaction towards the predator, towards the narcissistic individual or the actual narcissist, of revulsion. They're like, bleh, I do not want this. Your gut instinct understood it, but because we were never conditioned to respect our gut instinct, to really connect with it and understand it and respect it, we bypassed it. And then we lapse into what's called euphoria. So let's talk about those 4 key elements of seduction that separate it from its healthy opposite of flirting. So the first one is that seduction is intense. All their focus is on you. All their energy is on you. All their time. They might be lavishing you with gifts and affection, with love and praise and time. They want to consume you. You feel like they really, really want you. They want to be with you all the time. They start injecting themselves into your world, interfering with work schedules, with your daily schedule. And you think it's kind of cool. You're like, yeah, I like this. This is neat. Because you've been starved for attention. You've been starved for affirmation. You've been starved for acceptance and for affection and for feeling like you're wanted and desired. So this is a huge thing, and we get swept up really fast because seduction, the intensity of it, starts to impact a lot of our unmet core needs and activates them. And this creates an interesting combination with us of fear and what we would term as love in this phase. It's not actually love, it's attachment. It's a euphoric attachment. And this combination gets us hooked on them because now we have this chemical issue in the background of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, adrenaline, all mixing together, and cortisol mixing together, and this creates a really compelling and addictive substance for the brain. So we become really, we begin to build what's called a trauma bond with them. This is the first phase of that because we're scared of them. But man, I like them. I like this intensity. I'm really feeling it. I'm in love. Someone finally has got me. So it's very, very intense for us. And this seduction tends to mimic your internalized fantasy of what love is. And so you feel like, finally it's happening. Someone really gets me, really wants me. Wow, they make me whole. You know, they complete me, this kind of stuff. And this moves to the second phase of seduction, which is the grandiosity, the second element of it, rather, which is the grandiosity of seduction. They may claim that you complete them, that you're exactly what they've been looking for. This is really important because this phrase here, you're exactly what they've been looking for, is true because they see you as an object. Notice they use what and not who. I hear all the time. Oh, you're exactly what I've been looking for. Oh, good. Now I'm an object to you. Awesome. Great. That's what we all want, right? We want to be an object. But to them, you are, because you are a resource for supply. Again, Supply is the fuel they take, they glean, they leech off other people's attention, affection, sex, love, time, money, resources, that inflates their sense of identity in themselves, and their grandiosity, like, wow, yeah, look at me, I'm me, I'm special, that kind of thing. So it's grandiose. So they claim that you complete them, that you're what they've been looking for, that you guys are soulmates, you're twin flames, you're destined to be together, it's written in the stars. And this really plays into that fantasy, that internalized fantasy of what love is. Like, wow, yeah, there was a person made just for me. And that's a really powerful, compelling thought. But it's a really dangerous element, because now you're buying into their narrative rather than accessing your own truth about it, because their narrative lines with your fantasy. So you're buying into it. You're beginning to give consent to this actual forceful violation, because notice they haven't asked anything in this. In the seduction phase, they're not asking if you want to do anything. They're pretty much leading the way. They may ask you out on a date, but then they start to push and tell you and drive you and move things farther and farther and farther into a control spectrum for themselves. So they're dictating time, they're dictating what's going to happen, they're dictating when things are going to happen, stuff like that. They're not actually asking you what you want, and they're not actually respecting your time and boundaries. They don't have any mindfulness of you, because they're there to consume you. You're the supply. Another way to look at supply is like food, right? I like donuts, I like steak, right? If I want my donut, I'm going to go to my store, I'm going to buy the donut, I'm going to eat it. I'm not going to sit there and ask the donut how it's feeling. I'm not going to have an emotional relationship with it. The donut's there for me to eat it. Boom. The donut was the supply. So that's the way they look at you. Just be really, really mindful of that. All right, so grandiosity. Things are just outlandish. And another signal for grandiosity is the time frame in which these things start to happen. So let's say you know on day one you meet, and he or she starts to love bomb you. You start to get this like, man, I really like you, I want to get to know you, let's go out on another date. So we start rapidly escalating our time together. Boom, 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 boom. And in this rapid escalation of time together, these statements start to come out. So date number 2, you guys have known each other probably for, let's say, a total of 4 hours, and they're like, you complete me, man, you're exactly what I've been looking for. Oh man, it feels like I've known you forever. Oh, I'm just amazed, and I'm amazed at that you get to be in my life, and that you get to be here with me, and that it's just so amazing. This is day 2. You've known each other for 4 hours, and they're spilling this kind of stuff out. That's a signal of grandiosity. The claims by themselves are completely grandiose. Nobody completes you. That's a red flag right there. What I've been looking for. How on earth could you know what I am, what you've been looking for? Number 1, I'm not a what, I'm a who. But number 2, you haven't known me. You don't know me. I mean, maybe after 6 months of really high quality dating, someone could say, you know, you're who I want in my life. I like you. I enjoy you. You make sense to my life. You add to my life. That's reasonable. And that's not even grandiose. That's pretty damn healthy. So grandiosity, very extreme, very, very early in the stages. It doesn't make any sense, but it's so beautiful, because it's this fantasy. We're getting our own Disney moment, or Disney prince or princess is showing up. Blech. The third, it really is bleh. Trust me. Yeah. Well, you don't have to trust me. You'll find out for yourself as you go through this. The third element of seduction is enmeshment. Okay. They want things to become entwined really, really fast. Okay. I have seen this, and then in fact my parents did this. They get married within a week. Boom. You met on Monday, you're married on Friday. Seen that happen. They start to add pressure towards commitment really, really fast. So you're on date number 4. You guys have known each other probably a total of maybe 24 hours, depending on how much time you've spent together. Maybe a little more than that. And he's like, you know, we should commit. I really want to make a life together. Let's make this happen. Because, man, look how it's been for the last 4 days. It's been so amazing. I mean, wow, this is everything. I mean, let's do this. Let's take that risk. Let's really jump out there and do this. This isn't enmeshment. It's an escalation of commitment. Very, very serious red flag here, guys. This plays into that fantasy of like, wow, I'm really wanted and I finally have that person. Because for codependents, the one thing we hate is uncertainty, and the one thing we crave is certainty, right? And that means in the dating experience, we avoid the onset of dating, the discovery component, and we move right into commitment. And that screws us up big time. But this plays right into it. So we're like, yeah, I can be committed. I finally have someone who loves me. I can be in that relationship. I finally have what I want. It's been 4 days. It's been long enough. Let's commit. And that commitment can show up as escalation to moving in together, entangling of finances, taking out loans for them, paying their bills, giving them a place to live. Sometimes they even move you. You move with them. But you start to notice in this enmeshment phase that your life starts to dissolve into their world, and their world starts to consume yours and replace yours. You start to lose contact with yourself. You're like, where am I? What's going on? What about my priorities? And they're like, we'll take care of that. But we need to focus on this. We need to focus on us right now. That kind of thing. This is the destruction of your autonomy, of your power, and of your capability of living your life separate from them. Because the predatory mind wants control over its supply. So they start to limit their power by enmeshing first with them and then starting to replace and alienate independent aspects of that person's life, like friends, family, financial power. Financial power and sex are the two things they typically go after first. So be real mindful of that. Healthy people don't want to do this, guys. They have no interest in this because they respect you as a person. Plus they realize, I've only known you for 4 days. Why would I even do this? It makes no logical sense because they're asking really important questions about their experience with you. How do you fit me? Who are you? What am I seeing? They're taking time to decode who you are. And Pavlina says, I would like to add that it's not always this fast. My experience was fast, but not within days. Yeah, the time frame varies. But the signal is that it's intense, grandiose, and meshing. So sometimes they take a month, sometimes they take longer. But there's a pressure to commit. There's a pressure to escalate that you're not really interested in. And it doesn't make a lot of sense in relationship to what's going on, especially to the amount of time you know them, as well as the amount of experience you have with them. There's this interesting and critical equation in relationship development that I use, and I call it time plus experience. You can't know somebody if you don't have enough time and enough variety of experience to expose who they are. And so when we're dating people, we date to discover, not date to commit. And this expansion of time plus the expansion of who they are through time and experience allows you to decode who they are based on their reactions to reality. And you're looking for consistent patterns of behavior. This is the key. Consistent patterns of behavior tell you who they are. And then you can make wise decisions based on that, despite how you feel about them. Because love is not a reason to commit to somebody. Love is a reason to... love at the beginning is pretty much euphoria or fantasy, limerence. It's a nice hint like, hey, I'm attracted to them, let's get to know them. And then love after you've decided decoded who they are and gotten a reliable experience with them is a reason to maintain the relationship as long as it's compatible and fulfilling for you. So really, love is not a reason to keep a relationship. It's the healthiness of the relationship, the compatibility, the fulfillment that it adds to your life that matters. And all of that can enhance love or detract from it. So Marnie says, exactly what happened with me online. I moved states and started to build a life for myself, but then slowly gave up huge pieces to suit him. So, well, it's you say it's my fault for this. It isn't necessarily your fault. You really didn't know what's going on in the background. When we get into next week's training, it's all about that that's happening in you that'll explain what's going on there for you, Marnie. So you can have some compassion there. I'd encourage that, because we didn't really actually have as much choice in this as we thought we did until we understand the EDD cycle, the euphoria, distress, and despair cycle that's going on in the background. All right, so we've got that enmeshment. And eventually, regardless of how fast it happens, they want to absorb, consume, and then replace your life with theirs. That way, you're their supply, their puppet. And this leads to the fourth element, and this is really critical. It's this addictive. You become very, very hooked on them. You need their approval. You crave their attention. You crave their affection, their time. And during this part of the phase, you start to notice a shift. They're starting to pull away from this a little bit. They're starting to become a little more indifferent towards you. They're starting to become maybe a little more critical, or a lot more critical. They start to not respond the same way they used to your affections. They start to devalue and then abuse you, because now they've got what they want from you. They got your attention, they're getting that supply, they've got you enmeshed, and now they're seeing you craving them. And this is a turn-off to them, because now they're starting to feel like you want something from them. You start to ask things from them, and they're like, why aren't you happy with what you get? You should be grateful that you're in this relationship with me. I mean, that's a really bold narcissistic claim, but a lot of times it's like, why are you so sensitive? You know, I thought things were just fine. Why do you need more? And you start to feel like you're too needy, too much, maybe even a burden. You also have losing sense of yourself. You've disconnected from your own body in some ways, or in many ways, and you're kind of feeling this floaty, euphoric, detached experience where you're just consumed in them and what they think and what they want, what they feel. You're crazed on them. You're hooked on them. If you can't locate yourself in a relationship, you're in trouble, because you're in the addictive section of the seduction phase. And this allows them to then start abusing you and discarding you, putting you through hell, because now you're going to respond with trying to make it better, which means more supply to them, which means more shedding of yourself. And that's really what gets you into it. That's the horror of the S.A.D cycle. And that's really, I mean, I didn't deliberately make it that way. It just came out that way when I designed this as seduction, abuse, discard, S.A.D. But this is what's going on, and this is the first phase of that, the seduction phase. So I want you to take some time today, kind of do an inventory on your life and your relationships, and write down the, I'll give all four of them to you again here. So how intense the relationship was, how it felt physically and emotionally to you, how rapid you got hit with attention, affection, gifts, time, sex, things like that. How grandiose the claims are, if you can recall them, because a lot of times we can't, because our brain has actually entered a threat, danger state of what's called freeze-fawn, and so our memories get really cloudy and murky at times with that. But see what you can identify as grandiose in their claims, and in what you felt too, because a lot of times we feel like they complete us. We're having our Jerry Maguire moment there, and we feel like they're exactly what we've been looking for and things like that. We got to be really conscious about what this seduction phase is exciting within us, and then identify what was enmeshing about it. How fast did they escalate you into things, and then what was that escalation with money, with sex, with living together, with giving up priorities for you, or setting them aside for a future time. We need to focus on ourselves, we need to focus on our relationship, things like that. Identify those things, because when you start to really identify it, then it pops out into your awareness more strongly, and you're better able to detect it when it starts to show up. And then finally, the addictive phase. Start identifying what it was like and what it felt like to lose yourself in the relationship. How scary it was, how lonely it was, how it began to feel empty for you, and how you began to feel a lot of shame and a sense of inadequacy and failure in being who you are. So I want you to look at that, because this builds into tomorrow's training, which will be on the abuse phase. So you can understand what abuse looks like, how it functions, what to deal with there, and then on Thursday we'll be talking about the discard phase. That way you'll have a very conscious, cogent, put together point of view and awareness of this cycle, so you can pick up on it quick. And notice, and I want to emphasize this, and I talked about this earlier a few moments ago, the gut instinct of repulsion often shows up first and we bypass it. That's very, very important for your recovery and for your health, because your gut knows this better than you know it. So if somebody feels off to you, you're feeling like I don't like them, respect it, despite this other cycle that kicks into your brain, the EDD cycle, or the euphoria cycle. So we'll be talking more about that tomorrow, guys. I appreciate you. Let's see. Man, my brain is a foggy one today. Did not sleep well. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. Okay? And I will see you guys in tomorrow's training. Okay? See you then.